Well, good morning, everybody. My name is David Crowter, and I'm Head of Private Client Services here at Carpenter Box. We had the budget yesterday afternoon, so as is customary, I thought I'd just give a few minutes of reaction on some of the key points from my perspective. So firstly, they announced an increase of 2% to the dividend tax rate beginning from April of next year. So that's a 2% increase to the basic rate and the higher rate. There's also been announced a 2% increase on the tax rates of interest and rental income from April 2027. And I think when we consider that in light of other recent changes to tax rates over the last few years and changes to reliefs, I think whether one is investing or trading, I think the question of whether doing that personally or doing that via a limited company is more crucial than ever. And I think if you're just a higher rate taxpayer from April 2027, you're actually finding yourself, if you're using a corporate, paying a tax rate that in effect is over 50% when you take into account corporation tax and the new higher dividend tax rate. So yeah, it's more important than ever, I think, to make those correct planning decisions. There was reference made to something called anti-forestalling, which I suppose is a measure that is intended to stop people bringing forward things like dividends artificially. No further information is available at the moment on that. So I think the question will be: is there some action that's needed between now and March next year to perhaps lock in some of the existing tax rates if they are lower? Another important change announced yesterday were changes to business and agricultural relief. So you may recall or may be aware that in October last year there were huge reforms to the taxation of business and agricultural assets from an inheritance tax point of view. And one of the consequences of those changes is that individuals will have only £1 million of allowance for inheritance tax purposes against the value of those assets. Previously, it was unlimited, and that £1 million was not transferable between spouses and civil partners. They've seen sense, I suppose, and announced that yes, that can now pass between spouses and civil partners on the first death. I think there'll be a lot of people saying, well, it would have been great to have considered that and have made that change at the time they made those previous announcements, because I think there'll be lots of people since last October who've gone away and rewritten their wills in anticipation that £1 million allowance won't transfer to their spouse or civil partner. So I think if you are someone with business and agricultural assets and you are affected by those changes announced last October, the question I think is, does your will need to change? And if you have rewritten your will since that announcement, does it now need to be rewritten again, sadly? I suppose some positive news, that there was concern around changes to ISA allowances, but I think there's a relief from lots of investors and savers that there's been no say removal of ISA allowances for existing savings. But from April 2027, the £20,000 cash ISA limit will reduce down to 12,000, but those over 65 will retain all of the allowances and availability for ISA savings that we have today. It was also announced yesterday that the tax allowances and tax bands would be frozen. So they're already frozen until 2028, but that freeze will now continue until 2031, and that seems to be a popular technique for raising taxes on really everybody. Finally, from April 2028, there's something called the high value council tax surcharge. So this is applicable to high value properties starting at 2.5 million. So yeah, from that date, there's an additional, say council tax charge in effect on properties above that threshold, starting at £2,500 per annum. Naturally, it just becomes more expensive, doesn't it, to own those properties? And there's certainly for other IHT planning reasons to consider downsizing. I suppose that will simply just add to those considerations. So just a few points there from yesterday's budget. I hope that some of that is helpful. If you need some more information, please contact one of the tax team. Thank you.